Created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm, and
I think you will have a whole levels of robotics, the humanoid robots or non-humanoid robots, whatever the case is.
But the one that I really gravitated towards was Alteryx. Low code, no code, business intelligence stuff, data science, machine learning, things like that.
Audio, the text, and then there's big metaverse bug. Everybody knows the metaverse.
another week of
Right. Well, and understanding what the biases are in anything that you use, right? So it's funny you mentioned software. So years ago, I worked for a OEM hardware company. And sometimes I worked in the server group. And what happened is people would call in and they had problems with a specific popular software, right? Well, I would know what your problem was, but in our instructions, the word was written. If the words were written in red, like Jesus said it or something, I was not allowed to tell you. We knew it already that was already broken, right? So, since I had to give you a answer, I tell you, load this software, patch this, and reboot. I knew it. We knew the answer the whole time. Like it was broke when you got it. We knew that, but you would never hear that from us, right? So just understand that there's always going to be ghosts in the machine, and sometimes it's on purpose. I had a class, and I had them to come up with using artificial intelligence the top 10 potato salad recipes, and then so they got them, and of the top 10, 5 of them had that wonderful ingredient raisins in them. And the reason why I had raisins in there is you told AI you need to get me the top recipes, but it didn't just look at recipes. It looked at all the TV shows and comedies that spoke about what? Raisins and potato salad. So it obliged and put raisins in all those recipes. When you said things like only use printed recipe books, or you would say things like exclude all fruit.
Right.
No apples, no raisins, and you will get a whole different list. So just understanding what we're working with and what the flaws are. You are the glue that holds it together. Whatever talent, whatever skill, whatever ability you have, you're the glue that holds it together. You are the artist, right? If you give me a nice set of paints and a brush, you will have a mess. But if you give someone who is an artist those brushes and paints, you got Picasso. That's all I'm saying.
well, yeah, it'll be a mess. It gives you about. It takes like 2 years to, at least that I understand, to put something that's worthwhile together out, and that was a long time ago. Now, with agile development, I don't know what the models are, how quickly they can put them together, but it's not something that's done quickly at all, by any means. It'll be ugly before it gets right, in my experience, and I think that people need. And again, we had this conversation before. People are so eager to take a benefit of an AI and claim victory. And that's what I'm seeing in industry and organizations. They're quick to say, "Hey, we're the first ones to develop the AI." And they got their little AI badge, whatever it is, and you figure out what the AI is. And wait a minute, that's just a chat bot. It's been there forever, but we've got the new AI. Or I think that there needs to be more time spent growing things so they understand it better. And if the true benefits of learning come with hard lessons or lessons learned hard.
Yeah.
And I think that I think we don't take enough time to do that. I think we're trying to jump to AI as quickly as we can. And I'm still seeing that now. It's just like we can save time, development cycles. Let's just go with the big dog and we'll put it out there and we'll just see what happens.
Lucky, I want you to talk about, you just mentioned something a few phrases ago with regard to right. What is right? What is wrong? I mean, that's something that you need to speak to because depends on the stakeholder, right? Like, who are you working for? What's the goal? Because that whole idea of getting something right and or wrong, I believe that that paralyzes people with fear. And so they want to stay where they are instead of creating change. So I want you to touch on what is right. What is right What is considered right in the world of AI?
No, you bring up a good. After I had the conversation with the individuals, I was reflected on it, and I was like, well, you know what? They're absolutely right. There may be situations, there may be instances where AI will just it'll fit in like a good puzzle piece, and it fits right in, and I thought about it. I was like, well, if I thought about security, boom, I know right off the top, I know that I can fit AI because all it is new data vectors analyzing statistical data in a certain way where we get stuff that we didn't see before, and that's easy. But then we look at it and they say, okay, if they try to develop a whole new model for, maybe analyzing patient data, or that's going to take a little bit longer to do. Um, um, not as quick, to get to those points. So I thought about it. I was like, when is it the right one? So my thing is, I just really believe that if you're going to put together any, not any, a large language model in house, if you're going to take the effort to do it, if you, I had an old guy tell me once, if you have the time to do something once and do it right, you have the time to make a mistake and have to do it again twice. You really don't have that time. So you really have to take the time to do it right the first time. And so I think that when it comes to large language models, maybe you need to take and develop one in house. If you have the people to, again, you have to have the right people to maybe try to take the time to learn and develop something in house, depending on the need, though. And again, it depends on the need. And you're right. What that is you have to have people that can say, okay, we don't just want it because it's cool, it sounds cool, but do we have the right data set to support something like this? And that it takes time to analyze that. So it's not an easy answer to what
Yeah.
you're saying. What is right, what is wrong.
Right.
That takes time to figure out. I wish I could just answer that easily.
And if I can jump into that right question, because
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I want to visualize. I want to be able to visualize this for everybody who's going to listen to the right and wrong answer here. The
Yeah.
wrong is yet to be even discovered, because the wrong that we're talking about right now is not even that bad, right?
Mhm.
Wrong is what's in the pipeline that's not even cooking yet, right? But we know it's coming because we have a format, we have a formula to understand what's happening in the AI space, which is that every AI that you see, you're going to see three aspects of it. It's going to be data, it's going to be a software, and it's going to be a hardware. You don't look at the hardware trying to figure out what's right and wrong. You don't look at the software trying to figure out what's right and wrong. You look at the data to see right and wrong.
Right.
Because these data, if it's garbage, is going to feed out garbage to the hardware through the process of software. If it's a good data, it's still going to go wrong because somebody could poison that data through the software, through the hardware.
Right.
If it's a top-notch data that you got from some trusted source, doesn't matter because even the trusted source doesn't know what trusted means, because trusted for one person is not trusted for the other, right? It's sort of like a virus. You carry that virus around. You don't know who is going to impact negatively, right? Because not all virus can kill everybody or can paralyze somebody, right? So you really have to think through right and wrong in the fashion that even if I know it's right, I have to, like you said, you have to test it out. You have to do a validation. You have to do a due diligence before you put that into the production, right? So if that data is so incredible that everybody's like, you know what, this is going to save so many lives. Well, how many lives is enough? And then ask the question, who's going to not benefit from it and who's going to have a negative impact on it?
Right.
So the right and wrong is as wide as AI conversation goes. But
Right.
let's put data into the perspective here, because if you have the data, if you have the software, if you have the hardware, if you're a hardware expert who doesn't understand data, you need that data guy.
Right.
If you're a software expert who doesn't understand the hardware, you need the hardware guy.
Right.
Because I'll tell you like this, because just because you develop the data and a software piece doesn't mean you understand hardware's future, where the hardware will negatively impact both the software and the data, because they all have to live in the same, synchronized kind of a lifestyle, right? This hardware doesn't work. Hardware diminishes services over time. That means that data is going to, I don't want to use the bad word here, but CRAP. In the software also, right? Software, you have to be able to say, how do we patch it? How do we update it? How do we keep it secured? So all three things will fight against each other. And that's not even answering the question about right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's just literally saying these three things can go wrong eventually. So we have lots of these right and wrong conversations we can have But what we need is the right people in the room to say, let's create a due diligence report. Let's create a way that we did our due diligence and say, these are the vulnerabilities that we can assess, and these are the risks that we have to accept, and these are the risks that we have to mitigate. And if we have to mitigate this risk, this is the way around with minimal amount of disruption. So what we call in the military COOP, right? Continuity of operations planning. If you have to do all these things, trust me, data is not your first problem. It's the due diligence of the data that you haven't even found yet, right? Once you do that due diligence, now you can publish that with whatever you put out in production saying, look, guys, here's the data nutrition label right here, right? Or that Bobby talked about that earlier, right? Data nutrition label. This label will tell you what could go wrong. And if it does go wrong, tell this person about it, or at least provide a feedback through this mechanism here. And these are the things that are just going to go wrong most likely. But even if things goes right, the reason it's right is because of these things. And I'll tell you one example of what goes right and why it goes right. Chat GPT specifically, if you look at it, they've been around since 2015. OpenAI has been around since 2015. The first time they released their GPT version was back in 2020, and then the one that everybody knows about came out in 2022. That's about 7 years to get to have OpenAI come out to the public and everybody knows about it. 7 years. 7 years, they have spent majority of the 7 years to do what I exactly just described to you, right? Look through the data. Where did that data start from? It started from a Reddit. It started from a comment thread inside of Reddit back in 2015 without understanding, hey, what's going to happen 7 years from now, right? They didn't have all this understanding, but they did have a data and they had a good software. They had a lot of money for the hardware, which is not easy to come by, right? 7 years later, they still are looking at all the problems that they couldn't fix 7 years ago or 7 years from now. They still don't know what to do because it's just that immense, right? But the popularity of it, the need for it, the way it solves many things, people are like, you know what, we'll fix it over time. But these are the things that are going wrong anyway. We know it. It's happening. There's lawsuits. There's people coming out and saying, you stole my book. You stole my music. Your AI is literally writing a book based on a book that I wrote. So you have all sorts of things going wrong, right? Do we not know about these things? Because we know who scraped the internet. We know who scraped the internet to teach that large language model how to build a chat GPT. So where I'm going with all of this is that yes, there's right and wrong, but you have to do a few things correct at minimum. But you can never get everything right, and you can never go that wrong, right? As long as you can address what's going wrong and so on and so forth.
Well, how much right do you need is also the question, right? Data centers take up a lot of energy and resources, and everything does not need the latest and greatest. Everything does not need a million tokens to work. So, for example, is if you got something controlling a car, that's important.
That's very important,
right? But the question is, if you put a stop, if these things happen, stop, else whatever your logic is, right? Mm-hmm. Versus, so let's say I can get 5.9 reliability from that system. Is that good enough? If it's medical, do I need 7 nines? Do I need 8 nines? How much reliability do I need? So in other words, you know, what they say, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. I'm just saying, what is the right tools? Yeah. I did a analysis of artificial intelligence in defense. And at the time, which was a couple of years ago, they was like, what is this? And I said, well, you have to understand, we're talking artificial intelligence. I need to lay out the battlefield, I need to define all artificial intelligence. So some of the equipment on an aircraft works based upon how high the aircraft is, right? A person doesn't just know that, this feels like 7,000 feet, right? But due to barometric pressure and other stuff, then we get data back. That is artificial intelligence. What I'm saying is have the right tools at the right level. So that is what people have to decide for their businesses, for their lives. What do I need? If you got overkill, it's just overkill, right? I need to go pick up groceries, but I don't need to do it in a Lamborghini. It'll get me there. It's expensive, but I can't feed 12 kids and put all their groceries in a Lamborghini. I can't. It won't work. So, you know.
Well, if you're doing Uber and Lamborghini, that's how you know you can get it right.
No, it's well said. And that's the there's a great benefit to it now. Where individuals can better themselves and use a lot of the functions now. If you're a salesperson, Chat GPT, fantastic. If you're into coding and things like that nature, I originally I tested Chat GPT and I found problems, but now it's fantastic. Now people can actually live off of it, use it, and there's a dying breed of originality there. We won't go there, but there's a lot of benefits there that you can take advantage that are have grown just leaps and bounds over the past 2 years. That I know before I was now I'm like, this is fantastic, and these things can help people right now.
Hmm.
Um, Hate to say it, if I was in college, I'd be using it. That's just the truth. Hey, the chat. Can you make me something original, please? Because everyone in class is using the same. They're probably asking you the same thing, but can you make it original for this one moment?
Yeah.
But I've seen where kids in college are using it, and they had all the same output.
Yeah.
She gives, she phrases, the focus of the paper, and they copy and paste, and then Chat GPT, and they got 10 students all with or 20 of them all with the same output. Again, that lets again, it's not alive, it's just an algorithm. It's just going to give you the same thing, data bit, what you put in, you receive. But I would be using it still. I mean, all right, I can put in a couple of words and what everybody else did. Look, Lucky's a little bit different, but I would take advantage of it. There's a lot of great things that you can learn from. Sometimes I'll be honest, I get writer's block. Remember that? Remember writer's block? Doesn't
Mhm.
exist anymore. you
Nope.
know?
Nope.
Yeah.
It's not.
Writer's block
Doesn't exist.
GPT. Boom. You get
Nope.
hit in the face.
Well, everyone's generating all these documents, right?
Hmm.
And I know where the documents came from. So I'm like, I asked my boss the other day, did you think I was going to read all this? She put 10 different things she ran through GPT. These are the things I want you. I was like, no, NIST has the standard. I will execute our checklist based upon this. I didn't need Chat GPT for this, right?
Yeah.
She's like, why do you say that? I said, oh, please. And she started laughing, right? So to produce work, just to say we produce work. I
Right.
myself, I'm working like when I teach a class, I moved away from true false or fill in the blank. I moved towards scenario based
Yeah.
because to me, knowledge transfer is I'm not trying to stump the chump. Everybody's always cheated. I want to know the stuff that we went over. Can you use that on your own accord in the real world, right?
Yeah.
I know I was a cheater when I was coding back in the day. When I first started, we were doing punch cards. So you would do one job that was an assignment. I would do another one. Then we take the cards and put them in the thing and duplicate the whole stack of cards and change the name. And there you go. Voila. Because the outputs were the same. So cheating has always been. The real question is, what is the core knowledge? Do you understand why this works? Right? Do you understand why this code works? Um, so I'm just really excited about new ways of testing learning because it's going to happen.
All right. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Out of the three of you, you have more than half a half a, you got 50 years of technology. Look, you guys have more than 30 years of technology under your boat your belts collectively. I want each of you to give the parent that is listening your top three things of their best next steps if they have no data, no AI, they're just let's imagine the scenario is they're newly divorced, they have been a house manager, raising kids. I want each of you to give them your top three things of what you would recommend them to do if they would come and sit with you for a conversation.
Mhm.
To
Who
be
first?
realistic,
I go first. You
yeah,
go
go
first.
ahead. Yep.
Well, okay. I don't have the answers, but
And
if
that's
I
either
would
a mom or a dad. That's a mom
okay,
or a dad.
okay, well, so if I would just take off the hats and say, okay, you know what, where do I start? Where can I begin? Um, the it would have to start off with, okay, what do you like to do? Okay, because like say if I was a musician or an artist, I'd take them down a different road, generative AI based. Say, okay, look, but if if I was just trying to, the first thing I would do is I would have to develop a resume. And you know what? That's the toughest thing to do, is to develop a resume and say who you are. And just I'll put myself out there. Recently it's been difficult in the line of field that I'm at. I'm not going to say where I'm at or where I work, but it's been really tough for all of us that work in a certain area of technology supporting a certain area of let's say government. Let's just leave it at that. Okay. And the thing is, a lot of us are left not knowing, okay, are we gonna lose our jobs? Or so now we're all in the same boat. We're at the end, we don't know what's ahead of us, but we have to prepare. So how do we do that? The first thing is a resume. How do you promote yourself out there? And that's what I say is the hardest thing to do. Because even though I know who I am, I know that I could talk all day and maybe I can get a job. But the reality is my resume, when I passed it on to people, they laughed. They laughed. They're like, what is this? And I said, it's my resume. I made it in Word. And they're like, this thing is horrible. And I was like, no, that's my life. How is that? And it kind of, it hurt a little bit. But the reality is, you can take your resume, or if you don't know who you are, start to put down words, make your resume, and then let Chat GPT or but there's ways of being able to use AI to define who you are and make a resume. I think that's the first thing you want to do. You want to make yourself marketable. You want to know who you are, and that's the first one where AI just steps right in and hits a home run, because I know that um, my resume was okay, and then my and I won't say who, but they stepped up and they took my resume and ran it through and they gave it back to me, and I said, "Wow, I like it," but I that's the first place I would start is resume, and then from there you start to step and identify areas of where you can work. And being a single parent, I know that I love to teach. That's my other than what I do technology wise, I love to teach. And so find out areas that really that make you, that drive you, that are easily for e- something that draws your attention, like hobbies, and try to make that something that you do in life, because at the end we do what we love if we're lucky. And so if you do what you love, you can also make money at it. Maybe use Chat GPT, or figure out ways of using. I keep going to Chat GPT because right now that's one of the areas I think that is strong. So I would use that. One is build your resume. The other two, find out things that you love to do and see if you can take advantage of an AI, not just ChatGPT, but AI. Songwriting, music, art. Um, you can use different models, but you get your resume right, and that's the hard thing to do, I think. And I'll stop there.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
if I can pick up off of Lucky's everything Lucky just said, so that's something that you have to do. But if you look at some of these, so let's use data, right? This is data
Mhm.
for our lives, right? The ontology of who we are. If you live for 60 years, you sleep for 20 years out of that, correct? And if you live for 60 years, you work for 20 years, and then you do everything else after that 20 years. So, if you work for 20 years, you sleep for 20 years. Let's talk about that last 20 years of all the other things: cooking, raising a kid, taking care of ourselves, writing a book, writing a whatever the case is. We have so many things that we have to do in that 20 years after we dedicate 8 hours in our lives to somebody else to work for them, whatever the case is. So that 20 years, if you reflect on that, and how long does it take me to cook? Can I cook with ChatGPT? Absolutely, you can. Can I put my camera on the fridge and say everything in this camera that I just showed you? Tell me how to cook something with it, and tell me how to cook it for a 5-year-old, and tell me how to cook it without pepperoni because my son, for some reason, just doesn't like pepperoni. All right. So there's no chicken. What do? Well, there's cheese on that corner. Grab that cheese. Is it expired? No. Okay, let's cook with that, right? So the idea of, if I'm standing in front of my fridge for 5 minutes and asking myself, what am I going to cook? Well, take a picture of it. In 30 seconds, ChatGPT will tell you what you can cook because these are the things you have available. So if you look at it from that perspective and going forward, as in like, what else am I doing? So Lucky mentioned music, Lucky mentioned teaching. Well, if you have to teach, do you set up a curriculum? And how long does it take? No, it doesn't take that long. Just put it in ChatGPT and say, build me a curriculum for music lessons for harmonica, right? Boom, curriculum is done, right? So, so if you're thinking about like how to utilize AI for my daily life, like I said, 20 years of sleeping, how do you do sleep better for 20 years? Right? Ask that. How do I get to my work and get my job done? Prioritize what it is I have to do. And I'll tell you one of the tricks is that in ChatGPT, if you open up a chat bot, a chat window, and then in that chat window, you can do scheduling. You can do your priority list. You can put all the tasks that you do and ask ChatGPT on a daily basis, like, hey, I've been logging all this task here. Tell me which one did I miss, right? ChatGPT will spin it out for you and say like, well, 3 days ago you said something like this, but you didn't follow through with that. Did you get it done? Right? Think about that power of that memory recall and that memory recall that consistently asks you, say like, oh, okay, today's task is this and this. I'm like, oh, well, you got to give me 10 of these, but I don't know which one to get done first. And then ChatGPT is going to say, okay, which one is money related? Or which one has that personal relationship that he didn't wait 30 more minutes, so let's just get that done first, right? So you see how it can walk you through and change the way you do things, right? So you have a better impactful 20 years at work, a better impactful 20 years after work, and better impactful sleep for that 20 years. You know what I mean? So I think you really have to think through like, how did I live my life before? How am I going to live with the AI? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, it's at my work only. Nah, I think it's in your personal life as well.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks.
Yeah. And to that end, I would say I have two big things. If I'm talking to a single parent, and I was a single parent, raising kids, number one is leveraging artificial intelligence to manage your money. Listen, no one likes their financial business out there in the street, and none of us are billionaires that I know of. See, are you? Really? Anyway.
Secret. I don't tell people about it.
We got one friend, Masa, and we know that he's an African prince from Zimbabwe, but he really hides it. True story. He hides it. His father-in-law done figured it out, like from coming to America, and has been harassing him for the last 15 years to just admit it. But for the rest of us, how do I manage my money? Here's all the expenses I have. Here's the things I like to do with the kids. Here's the things the kids are interested in. This is how much money I make. Recommend things to me, right? So it can help you with the analysis, and especially as you talk back and forth with artificial intelligence, it may tell you things, stop putting this in a regular savings account. This needs to go in the high yield if you're going to pay for college. It can help you master your money. One of the things as a single parent that so many of us worried about, I know I did, was how's the money going to flow? Can I pay for college for them in case they're not smart enough for a scholarship? Mm-hmm. And just in case, right? You ain't wishing it, but let's be realistic, right? So money management. And so it's like really the ultimate tool to help you play the what if game with your dollars and cents. And safe-wise, you're talking to a computer. You're not talking to a friend. You know he always broke. That's not going to happen, right? She ain't no good with money. Don't trust her. Don't lend her nothing. That's not going to happen, right? And then the other thing is, because we're so plugged in with so much information, we can't forget about the real world. So use artificial intelligence to help you as a single parent figure out the free things, the no cost or low cost things you can do with your children outside of the house. So they gain themselves some life skills, so they can learn to respect nature, so they can learn that everything is not attached to a dollar. They can see themselves their self-worth beyond the clothes that they have or the car that mommy and daddy drive. artificial intelligence is great for that because it knows what's out there, can kind of, as time goes on, figure out what you like, what they like, and when something comes available, say, hey, by the way, it's a free festival over at such and such. So use artificial intelligence to make your life, your kids' life, your family life better.
I love that, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Give yourselves a round of applause. That was awesome. Great job.
And I kind of want to bring this all together into the conversations why we're talking about what Masaka's talking about is that when we did the Merge Thirds conversation, we talked about I'm a parent. What do I tell my kids about AI, right? And this one is labeled I'm a rock star. Teach me AI so I can lead my team. So lead my team implies that you have a team, right? You are leading. You are a leader because you are a mom. You are a dad. You have kids. You have cousins. You have family. You are the lead, not a team lead in a business to make money, but team leads to grow a community, people that will contribute into the processes, that process that will impact everybody's lives, right? What if your kid is the next, I don't know, Andrew Ng? I don't know what your kid's going to be, but they're going to be impacted either by AI or they're going to create an AI to impact everybody else's lives, right? So we really have to think through the formulas and formats where we have to create those impressions in our kids' mind, right? Because if you think about it, AI will create this impression regardless of what you think about AI or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But you have some control over what impressions they will get out of this AI is super important. Super important in the sense that these AIs are so trusting that the kids will say, yeah, that cannot be a wrong information. Whatever is AI is telling me, I'm just going to go with that, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to go down that rabbit hole. That's a bad example to set for your kid because if he does it one time, he's going to have that impression over and over until something goes wrong, right? Now, if we have to use AI and we have to be very careful with how we use AI, we really have to create a people, process, and technology, right? We have to know who the people are. Those are people in my team, people that are in my gang, people that are in my neighborhood. Really have to communicate with each other and have to understand that, like, hey, what process are you using? And we just did that. We just exemplified the fact that this is the process that I use it for. I stand in front of my fridge and I take a picture of my fridge. Never done that in my life, but that's part of the process now. New one. You're taking a picture of your fridge for no reason, right? So, but something comes out of it because the process has changed. Things are getting better. You have a little bit more time in your hand. Your brain power is not exhausted all day long from doing all these things that you've done it for the last 30, 40 years, right? So, as I'm going down this rabbit hole of people, process, and technology, really, if you're a person and you're going to work in AI, talk to other people, tell them what it is that you do. If you're going to be using AI, tell them why you're using those AI, because that's how we learn. Again, I want to go back to early example in social media space. We didn't have that.
Right.
We weren't able to peek into somebody else's social media behavior. We've seen it out in the public. Don't get me wrong, but we didn't see what they were doing behind the keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How are they interacting with those information? What's happening in their life as they're interacting with this information? People went in many different directions. Some ended up doing something good, but some ended up doing something really bad.
Yeah.
And if you know what I'm talking about, kids are not aware of these things. Kids are not understanding social media, Instagram pictures, self-esteem, things that they're seeing is not real. Behind the keyboard, in front of the keyboard is two different things. So really, we have to be able to say these things out loud and get comfortable with communicating. Because, like I said, we have to get in front of the curve, not wait for the curve to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I really like that you hit on that, the dark side of just anything. There's no substitute for you as a parent, right? It's a great job, but it's worth it. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, there's no substitute for you, no matter what's going on. The times change, but danger is always out there, right? Or miscommunication is always out there. I mean, back in my day, one of my sons told the teacher that it's nothing wrong with adopting, but he told the teacher he was adopted. I was his stepfather. His real father burned alive in a car crash, so he shouldn't call me when he gets a bad grade. So the poor guy was not called. I came up to the school and the teacher acted like he didn't want to talk to me because this kid had told him I was dead. He killed me. It happened, right? Now I was talking to the grandkids on FaceTime, and I caught his son saying, "Alexa, who's my real daddy?" So I'm just saying, you know, so, kids are still going to be kids, right? So, you know, so no matter how great technology is, remember that the most valuable tool that any child has is us as parents, grandparents, the village, the community.
And oftentimes, going back to the title, I'm a rock star, teach me AI. Oftentimes, when people are, they're leading a group on an idea, but they're not subject matter experts in AI, right? They feel intimidated because how am I going to relate this new thing that isn't so new to my team that look up to me, that see me as their leader, but I don't necessarily completely understand it.
Right. Well, and then the thing is, there's nothing wrong. In fact, the adult learning model is joint discovery. The teacher is now really a facilitator, right? Or what we call a guide on the side. The group that they put you in, that's where the discovery learning happens, right? So, but we will still get up and insist upon an old model where we have to know everything. No, let's discover this together. Once we discover it, now let's validate it together. We've all learned together. And for adults, that seems to be far more effective than memorizing, reciting, and
learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yeah.
Something that we have a hard time doing. But we want to end the conversation here until the next time, where we will meet again, and we will discuss this even further. And it will get technical. It will be really uncomfortable. And we will talk about it from the perspective of, hey, if you're listening, we're trying to be thought provocative here, right? And we're trying to give you some food for thoughts. But we want to be able to say, you heard something today that you're going to take notes on and you're going to research it. And like Jennifer Lopez, J-Lo from the box.
J-Lo from the box. AI, what is J-Lo from the box? Go correct it.
Jenny from the block, right? You want to be able to get familiar with J-Lo from the.
No, that's Justin Timberlake in the box.
So yeah, let's throw it off. So like Masako, what do you think the conversation is next, and where do you think we're heading with the conversation here?
I believe that we are heading to some best next steps. Our next conversation, I want some individuals, rock stars, parents, whatever individuals identify themselves as, to come to the broadcast with some solutions that they think they may have had, and then letting them reinforce that through our dialogue.
Yeah. Lucky.
Well, I'd like to see more. I've always failed 5 times or 4 times, and then succeeded once, and all anyone ever sees is success. And the failures, I think, are the scars, are what the more important makeup of what it took to get there. And so I'd like to see, us bring more people on that are new to it. I love to teach, and so whenever we can do to mentor others, to bring people on, I don't want to talk over anyone. I'd like for people just to really learn. And the one or the two people that we heard that we help learn, or hey, if we turn on the light in that moment, that's exponential across these mics and across what we're providing here through the internet. So I'd like to be able to maybe bring some people on, and we have 2 hours. I know we can figure something out. In 2 hours, we can learn something new together. And so this is definitely a good platform. I like it. So thank you.
Yeah, safe space. Remember, guys,
Yeah.
safe space. We each of us carry something throughout the day, right? Everyone has their own storyline that they're walking in. So, being
Mhm.
that we're a safe space for them to be like,
Yeah.
So, Bobby,
To get through
Yeah,
sometimes,
I think
thank
she just said the magic words. I just think that it's important that in that safe space that here's a place that you can come and be totally jacked up, and we're like, welcome, right?
well, right.
Because those are the best places to explore and learn new things where there is no expectation other than we have a good time while we learn and explore new things.
That's
Right.
right.
So the good thing about this particular group of people, if you look on paper, yeah, it briefs really well. I mean, we are super qualified, blah, 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 but we're also superhuman, super real, super concerned about our fellow human being, right? And
yeah,
that's, I think, our most admirable asset across the board. So
Yeah.
welcome to it. We just looking forward to really getting to know folks and letting you get to know us.
yeah.
Well, if I was to bring one thing up for the next conversation is a pie in the hand and maybe something to drink.
Oh, so we're gonna meet in person. We're gonna meet in person for the next one. We're gonna do it live. Or are you saying show up with some pie? Who's baking? Who's baking? Which one of you is bakers?
Well, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT who's gonna bake and who's gonna bake it actually very well that we all can enjoy it, right?
Well, I have space for you guys to sit here. If we could
Oh,
all,
nice,
you
nice,
for us to actually do it here.
nice.
But that we'll give it time. We'll figure out one day. One
Yeah,
day.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I'm
So,
looking forward.
guys, super optimistic and super positive about the future because I've always been, and I think that's what I associate with you guys with is that you guys are very super optimistic about the future, and that gives me a lot of energy, and that's the energy I need to say. "Ay, ay, 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 ay."
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah,
There you go. Hey, we finished strong.
yeah.
We finished strong. Thank you all.
Have a
See
good
y'all
one.
soon.
All right, y'all be blessed and
You as
continue to be
well.
a blessing.
Awesome. You as well. Thank you.